Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's Creative Conversation. You are really in for a treat if you're watching us live, wherever you are on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. Feel free to leave comments. We are here with you. We'd love to hear from you. I'd love to know where you are in the world. I'd love to know what you're working on. And if you have any questions live for us during this chat, pop them in the comments and we will respond to them. If you have questions after the chat, because I know a lot of you are going to watch this after, tag me or today's amazing guest, and we will make sure to address those as we move forward. So without further ado, this is this week's Creative Conversation. Each week, I meet with amazing entrepreneurs who are helping other creatives rise. And today, we have Dawn Verbrigghe here with me. She is an expert at growing early stage and small businesses. She is the founder of Jottful. If you are in the Midwest, and particularly if you are in the Ann Arbor or Detroit area, you have probably heard of Jottful because it's pretty amazing. They help small businesses build and host websites, and we're going to talk all today about building what Dawn calls a growth engine for your business. We're going to learn what that is, and we're going to talk about how as small businesses we can actually market successfully. Dawn, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Laura. Really excited to be here. And I was so excited that you got to be on our podcast last week, although the episode hasn't come out yet. So if anybody sees this, they want to watch that. Love to have
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. You can listen to Laura. Yeah, we flipped the script.
That was a great show too. That was really fun. We talked all about referrals and how to get more referrals. So, Dawn, let's go back in time for a second. What was, I first want to understand from you, why did you create Jottful? What was sort of the inspiration behind that?
You know, Laura, so I studied as a graphic designer in college and became a graphic designer, and then ultimately switched into marketing communications, which is just like becoming the client of yourself overnight. I was working in-house, so I literally just moved to the other side of the table overnight. And the thing is, I had been building websites forever. And so naturally, when you have people in your family who are small business owners, you're going to be stuck building their websites if you have a design and marketing background. So I had built a number of websites, my uncle's salon, hair salon, my mom's bridal shop. And it was really just helping my mother with her bridal shop over the years that I just thought, how is this so hard? Right. You know, at the time it was 2017. I thought, how in 2017 is it so hard for a business owner to get a website when there are plenty of designers and agencies out there? And there's all of this software like Wix and GoDaddy and Squarespace that you can use to build your own website. And I really dug into the problem, obviously, not only with my mother, but with also other business owners in her sort of situation. And I realized that the options out there just were not helping really the micro business market. So solopreneurs and people with, a handful of employees, because agencies and designers cost a few $1,000s, and it's just unaffordable for most really small business owners and people just starting out. And the alternative of building your own website, let's face it, even though the tools are drag and drop, the truth is you need some design, some marketing, and some technical expertise in order to be able to build something that, you can actually be proud of, and be willing to tell people your URL, but also that you are confident is going to be effective for your business. And so they were stuck in this place where one option was too expensive and the other option was too hard, and that's how we came up with Jottful. Right? We tried to kind of thread that needle.
Marry the two. I love that because it's true. I come from a marketing background, and I've also done a lot of web. I'm not a formal designer, but I've done so much design in my career, just being in startups, that for some of us, it's very natural. Like you learn it, you pick it up. But if that's not what your expertise is, if that's not your area of interest, what would appear to some of us like, really simple tools are actually really daunting. And if anyone is wondering why that is, just go look at like most small business websites. They need a lot of help. A lot of help.
Yeah. And even if you do have some of those skills, one of our customers is an author, And he said, look, I built my own website before. I know that I can do it, but my goodness, is that a good way, good use of my time, right?
Yes.
I need to focus on, selling my books. I don't need to be remembering every 6 months how to use this software so I can make some additions to my website, right? So that's really what Jottful's trying to solve.
Which this is an interesting segue into talking about growth engines, because a lot of times you talk about, you're mentioning something that I think a lot of small businesses get tripped up in, is that we can spend too much time on things that, one, are not our expertise, and two, may not be the right place for us to focus if we want to grow. I feel like the trait of a great leader is knowing how to delegate, is knowing how to say, I may not be an expert in this, but I can find experts to help support me in these different areas. So when we talk about a growth engine, explain to us, first of all, what is that and how does that apply to small businesses?
Yeah. Okay. So this part I'm pulling from research, right? I'm not making this up, but really, if you think about it, there are only a few different ways you can discover a new business, right? You can happen across them. You can hear somebody talk about them. Maybe somebody tells you about them, or maybe somebody proactively contacts you and tells you about their business, right? There are really only so many ways that you can hear about a business. And so there are only so many growth engines, or so many ways that a business can really build a repeatable, scalable sales engine, right? So a way to reliably get new leads for their business. And those are through outbound sales, through partnerships with other companies that have access to that audience or access to that customer base, through advertising, which is a form of marketing, or through content marketing, which is sort of just the more organic version of advertising, which is paid, or through virality, which, a lot of companies that sell to consumers grow through virality, right? You buy that coffee maker and you love it, so you tell 2 other people, they buy it and they love it, and so they tell a couple of other people. What happens is that oftentimes we think that our business might grow naturally through virality, but the truth is that's not how most businesses grow. Most businesses need to have a product that their customers, love using and are happy using, plus a growth engine on top of it. You can't really rely usually strictly on virality. And so you're probably looking at one of the other ones: advertising, content marketing, sales, or partnerships.
That's really interesting. So it's a great product plus a growth engine equals growth for your business. So do you find, so let me ask you this, because I think what I see a lot with small businesses is people going absolutely bananas, bonkers, crazy, creating content. And they're creating content until they are blue in the face. Is that where people should start? How can that be more effective for people? Let's talk about, like, what are people doing wrong?
Yeah. So the first thing you want to do is you want to look at all of those 5 growth engines and figure out which ones might have the highest likelihood of success for your particular type of business. So quite notoriously, for example, you remember old Hotmail? Do you remember Hotmail?
Yes, I do, Dawn.
And, one of the things they did is at the bottom of it, every message would say this was sent for free from Hotmail or something like this, right? And that really juiced virality, right? Because people would get that email, or BlackBerry in the day, right? Everything would say it came from a BlackBerry. Somebody would receive it and say, oh, there's this thing called Hotmail where I can get free email from, or look, everybody seems to be adopting BlackBerry. In that case, virality is built into the product. So if you have a product or a service that you can naturally build virality into, well, maybe you should look at different ways that you can go to market with virality, in which case, to your point, Laura, you are not focusing so much on content marketing, right? You're focusing on virality. Content marketing is great. For example, let me give you this example. SEO is a type of content marketing. Search engine optimization is a type of content marketing. Search engine optimization is a great investment if you have a lot of user-generated content on your website, or if there's some way for your website to grow all the time. So an example of this would be, do you know Thumbtack, the company that helps match?
Yes. Service providers like home repair people, or things like
handy
that.
people,
Handyman or handy women,
exactly.
yes.
I mean, they do all kinds of professions, but yeah, that you can, as a homeowner or even a small business owner, sometimes you can go there and you can find people who can help you out with specific projects. That's great, right? Because you have the people who provide the services creating profiles about themselves, and all of those profiles are just adding pages to your website, which is improving your
SEO
search results, your SEO, right? So think about the type of business you have and what it might naturally fall into. There are some businesses for which partnerships, for example, are the obvious way to go, because there are some companies that have access to distribution in that industry. For example, there's a pharmaceutical company a pharmaceutical finance company that I talked to. They realized that their best growth engine was going to be through a pharmaceutical distributor, because that distributor had access to all of these doctors in a way that if they tried to go there through individual sales reps, it was going to take them forever to build up. But they went through this pharmaceutical distributor and they were able to access all the doctors who are ultimately their clients. So so you really want to just come up with a list first of those top 5 and think about the type of business you have and where might you start to focus.
Now, what I love about this is what you're not saying, which is just because your friend, your coworker, or the person in your co-working space is doing something that's working for them, that does not mean it's going to work for you.
Exactly.
So really thinking strategically about this. Now, let's talk a little bit about creatives. And by that, I mean our freelance designers, our photographers. They can even be our content people. Some of these folks don't have, what I hear from a lot of service providers is they say, well, maybe a designer or photographer has some visual stuff, but a lot of times writers don't. They don't have something pretty to share on Instagram. How do you recommend, just for creatives, what should they be thinking about?
Something that you talked about on our podcast, Laura, the Marketing Made Easy by Jottful podcast, is the need to really understand your market and what niche you want to approach within that market, right? And once you understand what niche you want to approach, then you want to go around and you want to figure out who already has access to that niche. What are those people reading? All of the channels that you can use to reach that niche, you refer to the people in the niche as an audience, right? So, for example, you might have somebody in your niche who watches MSNBC. Great, you could reach them through MSNBC, but you're also going to reach a whole bunch of other people who are not your target, right? So what you want to do is you want to find the channel that not only reaches the people in your niche, but also as efficiently as possible, so you're not getting a whole bunch of people outside of your niche, right? You want to start to really focus down that way.
Dawn, let me ask you this. For small businesses who are listening right now and considering what growth engine is right for them, I can imagine some people are thinking, oh my gosh, this sounds like it could be really expensive. Does marketing have to be expensive? Does building your growth engine have to be expensive?
No, it doesn't. And each one of those growth engines I talked about has not only a different budget required to run it, but also different lengths of time before you're going to start to see results. So advertising is probably going to be the most expensive one you're going to pay for every single customer you get, right? The nice thing about advertising is you deliver results really quickly if you're doing direct response advertising, right? If you look at partnerships, on the other hand, it might be really inexpensive to do partnerships because you're only paying oftentimes if you actually win the deal, right? So you only pay on commission. So it's very inexpensive to get started. However, it can take a very, very long time to start to build up business through a partnership, depending on your partnership. And also it's less reliable, right? You can't just the way you can with advertising, crank up the volume and get more leads in, or crank it down and get fewer leads in if you have a bunch of employees on vacation.
Exactly.
So it really just depends on which ones you're going after. Content marketing
takes time.
It takes time, but it can be more inexpensive, right? If you have the ability to prepare some of that content yourself and you're not having to rely on too many content creators to make it for you.
I want to say to everyone who's watching this, who's thinking about content marketing, which is what we see constantly. I mean, we are living in a world of content, from TikTok to Instagram to LinkedIn to blogs to YouTube, whatever you want, everything. It's all content. And people are very attracted to it. I'm a content marketer by trade. Dawn, I know you know a ton about content marketing. And I want to say to everyone who's thinking about doing content, content's great. It's important, but it's not the fastest path to cash. And if your business needs a quick influx of cash, content marketing, especially positioning yourself as a thought leader in your industry, that's a multi-year journey.
Yes.
That's not, in the next 30 days.
Yep.
So just be aware of that when you're thinking about it. Often I find the fastest path to cash is to do ads. If targeted, working with an expert who can actually run them for you is probably one of the quickest ways to go.
Yep. And I would say also with content marketing, one of the challenges, because it takes a long time to start to see results, real results. And by real results, I mean actual cash in the bank, right? Yeah. Because it takes so long, you have to rely on early indicators to let you know whether or not the platform you're using for your content marketing is worth it. And that can be really difficult, right? Yeah. You might spend a few months investing in LinkedIn, right? Writing all of these long posts, maybe participating in a LinkedIn pod or something like this. And then you have to rely on early indicators because you're not really going to start seeing cash yet to help you know whether or not you should continue doing that, or if maybe you should start to focus on Instagram or another channel. And I think that that's really one of the challenges with content marketing is you have to know your audience super well, so you know which channel is going to be going to reach them before you invest in content marketing. Otherwise, you're just going to try a whole bunch of different channels and you're going to keep changing your mind. You're going to lose your investment over and over.
And you can't, but at the same time, I have to say, if it's not working, friends, don't be afraid to switch. Don't be afraid to go. Yep. You gotta move. You gotta pivot. You've got to try things out. In fact, one of the things that I'm going to be starting, just because I'm so obsessed with TikTok personally, is I was like, I want to play with this. I want to try it out for the business. Now, does that mean I'm investing hours a day in it? Absolutely not. It's like a 5-minute a day investment for me, just to test the water, see if anything works, but try it out for a period of time, try it out for 30, 60, 90 days, see if anything happens. But to Dawn's point, be very careful. You need to know your audience, pinpoint, thumbprint specific to understand what their needs are. Otherwise, you're going to just contribute to the noise. Yeah. So I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, Dawn, a couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
What marketing habits do successful business owners have in common?
Oh, that's a great question. So for the podcast, I've been interviewing all of these business owners who are not, by the way, marketers by trade. They are business owners. I am a marketer by trade. And so it was really interesting to hear people who aren't and how they approach exactly this. The one thing that I really noticed is just how disciplined they are. Oh my goodness. There was one person who's a real estate agent in Seattle, and I interviewed him, and he gets up and he spends 3 to 4 hours every single morning. And his channel is content, his growth engine is content. He spends 3 to 4 hours every single morning just working on content. And he is disciplined about it. And he is basically the only biz dev person on their team, right? He's able to do this in 3 to 4 hours a day because he's so disciplined about it. And it drives leads for the entire business, which is great. I see this consistently. There was a woman who's an attorney in Orange County, California. And she set a target of being on 100 podcasts or interviewed by 100 journalists in a year. And so she just gets up every day and sits down and says, here's my hit list of people that, I might reach out to, people who are podcast hosts, journalists, and so forth. And she just sends out cold messages and tries to get on their show. And I mean, hey, she was on ours. It was effective and she's great. And
and it'll
that
hit.
Kind of thing just builds up, right? You start to build up your clients.
I love that. So there is that discipline. This is something mixed in with that discipline is consistency.
Yes.
And this is what we talk about all the time. You must be consistent because consistency, especially in your marketing, whatever you're doing, it builds trust with people because they know, I can trust, I'm going to see them at this time. I can trust their content's going to be like this. I can trust that if I give them a referral, this is how it's going to grow because they consistently show up. So it can't be To your point, like, a shot in the dark, and then, oh, let's do this other thing. Oh, let's try. It's not just working hard, it's working smart. So I love that.
It's that consistency that really helps those people, your prospects, really start to feel like they know who you are. They can start to predict. I mean, honestly, if you're talking to me, I'm probably going to talk to you about how small businesses can grow. I talk about it all the time, over and over again, no matter what podcast you're listening to, whatever I'm reading, it's all about how can small businesses grow? How can small businesses grow? And when you start to like have that consistency, people think, oh, if I want to like learn more about how small businesses can grow, maybe I'll ask Dawn, right? She talks about this all the time.
And so that brings me to another sort of way we can think about ourselves, and we can ask ourselves, what do I want to be known for?
Yes. Yep.
What do I want to be known for in the market? And I think I said it on your podcast, but I want to say it here. Cash loves clarity.
Yes. Yep.
The more confused the messages, friends, the more all over the place you are, the less people will remember what you do, the less likely you will be referred out, the less likely people will work with you because they're confused. They're like, you're awesome.
Yep.
But what is it you do again? So I love that. Very clear.
Yep. I think that clarity is important, not only in terms of what services you offer or what products you offer. You don't want to be everything to everybody, or you're nobody to no one, right?
Right.
But also in terms of, especially with content marketing, the kind of content that you put out there, because oftentimes people will mix business and personal. So you want to be very careful about what kind of personal content you're putting out there. There's somebody who I think is pretty great on Twitter, and he has his clear sort of business lane, right? And then he's chosen one aspect from his personal life that just adds a little bit of interest. In his case, he's a corgi dog lover. So he'll post pictures of corgis, right? And so now you feel like you know him a little bit on a personal level, but guess what? He's not telling us everything about his personal life. And I think for people who are, have a lot of different interests, it's really hard to not go too far in terms of what they're interested in, both business-wise or personal-wise. But yeah, being sort of really clear about it, to your point, Laura, I think is really smart.
Dawn, what I do, because I do love to talk about my personal life, but not on business channels. So the way that I do it is, I have a private Instagram account, and that's just for my friends. And, that's where I talk about what's going on in my life. It's not meant to be for business. It's not meant to get me a certain amount of likes or reposts or anything like that. It's just a personal space for me to talk about what's going on. And then what I show to the world is what y'all are seeing today. So that's one way to also deal with that. If you're like kind of like a content nut like me, you just want to share. So
I agree. That can absolutely be a challenge. And the real estate agent I referenced earlier, a lot of his clients come through this enormous Facebook network that he's built, which you might imagine is really a mix of business and personal. And he gets a lot of clients through personal referrals, friends and family members referrals out. So he wants to make sure that they see his real estate content too, but he doesn't want to bombard them with real estate. He doesn't want to become that guy, right?
Yeah.
And so on his Facebook channel, he dials back the real estate, plays up the personal a bit more. But on LinkedIn, it's more about the real estate, right? So you can think about it from a channel perspective too.
I love that. Okay, so one thing we like to do in these talks is I really love when we can get real about either a mistake we've made or a challenge we've had in the business or something that's just kind of not gone the way that we maybe hoped it would or thought it would. And so, Dawn, I really want to ask you, when you were starting Jobful, or even at another point in your career, was there a moment when you said, oops?
Yes.
Like,
how many do you want me to list? Let me give you a good example.
Tell us more.
So Jottful is not the first company that I started. My background is almost entirely in tech, right? So some hardware, semiconductors. I worked at Samsung Electronics, but mostly software, and almost all early stage companies, at least on the software side. So a Series C, an A, a B, and a C. And if you're familiar with venture capital, you know sort of what those mean, but like a lot of different early stage software companies. And I started a business a few years back, and it was making custom tailored suits for women. As you can see, a bit divergent, right? It had it had that, that classic challenge where the founder herself, me, had a problem, and I looked for a way to solve my own problem and decided to turn it into an entire business. What I realized is, because I was approaching it as an outsider, I actually had some insight that people in the industry didn't have, which is really an interesting thing to take note of. And I've thought about it a number of times as I'm starting a software business, as somebody with a software industry background, is how can I really look at this from an outsider perspective? I think there's real value in that. But I didn't have the passion to sustain that business, right? Like ultimately, that just wasn't my jam. I'm really a software girl. And I just had a really hard time sustaining it. And I just stopped enjoying it once the big challenges, what I perceived to be the interesting challenges of product development were solved. And so I think that there's a huge lesson there, is that before you start a business, you have to figure out whether or not this is something you can really run the marathon. And by marathon, I mean ultra marathon.
Yes.
Is this really the one you want to do?
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I love that, because one of the things that I've learned in personal branding, and one of the things I talk to clients about, is what could you do, to your point, what could you do and talk about for the next 5 to 10 years?
Yes.
Because that's really what it's going to take to separate the wheat from the chaff. That's how you're going to rise. Is y'all know Dawn's going to be talking about small businesses. It's small business marketing. That's it. Everyone knows I'm going to be talking about how women rise and how we get women over the $1 million mark. That's my area. That's my interest. It's all I want to talk about. So I love that you frame it within that context, because I think people can get, and Lord, I have too, we get swept away in our interests. And maybe they're just not what we want to do. And that's okay. That's okay. Dawn, this has been awesome.
Always, Laura.
I would love if you could tell the audience how they can learn more about you.
So you can always go to Jottful's website. That's JOTTFUL.com. And I know that I've mentioned the podcast a couple of times here, and Laura's episode, I think, is coming out in the next week or two. The podcast is called Marketing Made Easy by Jottful, and you can hear it wherever you get your podcast. But every week we interview a business owner who sort of made it to the other side, who's established who's gotten some momentum in their business, has reliable, predictable lead generation, and they reverse engineer the process for us, and they talk to us about how they got there and what's working for them. So super interesting. Every week I learn stuff from the people that I interview, which is a bonus of being a podcast host for sure.
I love it. And something I want to mention to the audience, if you are listening during the week of September 6th, this is the week right after Labor Day, join us this Friday morning. We're doing a Creatives and Coffee Chat in Royal Oak, Michigan. All the details are at bravebydesign.net/events, and you can learn more, or you can message me directly. Dawn, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Laura. Take care.